Welcome to The Drilldown, in-depth answers to oilfield questions. I'm John Spears.
And I'm Richard Spears.
Rich, I know you're excited about having received a vaccine, right?
I am. And for those people who are watching on our YouTube channel,
yes,
I am holding this up to the camera because this is my passport to the world.
Oh boy.
I'm getting out of town.
See, and that's what got me thinking about what we should talk about this week, because my theory is that, we've talked about ESG, environmental social governance, and the climate change initiatives, and a lot of things that oil companies are doing to address some of the society concerns we have, right? And I was just wondering, I was thinking that maybe these kind of initiatives are the oil companies' equivalent of the Pfizer vaccine.
Oh, wait, okay. So, for example, 2 years ago, nobody was really even thinking about ESG.
Not on this side.
It doesn't spell anything.
Right, yeah.
And none of us were thinking, well, if you went to Africa,
yes,
you had to have a passport that had all your inoculations,
yes,
tetanus, all the other stuff, diphtheria.
All the rest, yes.
But all the rest of us, you want to go to France.
Yeah, sure. Right.
No, don't care. But this is
but again,
March.
what's the purpose of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines? It's all about
to prove to everybody else that I'm not going to catch it.
That's right. So, and we can resume, and return to civilized society.
Normal.
Right?
We're getting back to normal.
There you go. Exactly.
So, is there I bet you're wondering then, is there an equivalent in the oil industry for getting back to normal?
So see, the thought is that, and one of the things we've espoused, certainly I've espoused, is that oil companies in general are not going to have access to outside capital. Part of that comes from their poor track record of returning profits to investors.
You've cheated me once.
That's right. Yes, but the other part of that is clearly the concerns around climate change that are driving some investors to not invest or lend money to anybody that has anything to do with fossil fuels. Right?
I'm going to be far more eager to put my money into an environmentally clean energy creation device like lithium batteries.
There you go. Absolutely right.
All the mine all the lithium you want in China, as long as it's over the horizon,
right? And not CO2. Yeah. So the point being, though, that. And so we've said from that, okay, oil companies are going to be much more dependent upon and reliant upon internal capital to fund their CapEx programs.
Yep.
And while I think that story is intact, it's pretty clear that all these oil companies, whether we're talking the super majors or we're talking about the U.S. shale majors and so forth, have all stepped up with announcements regarding their intentions to achieve net zero carbon at some point in the future, 2050 or
they've got it on the plan.
There you go. Right.
They're not going to be a net consumer of fresh water, for example.
That would be one.
They're not going to be spewing out
no methane, nothing like that. Absolutely right. So their operations are going to be net zero. The stuff that they produce is going to be carbon neutral, that kind of thing. So my point is that if they do this and they're making announcements and then they're following through on that, I wonder if some of the investor community that might otherwise shun the oil patch might say, okay, you're doing enough. You've had the vaccine. And so we will consider buying stock, investing in the company in one way or the other. Right?
Like the Yale Endowment Fund.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They might say, okay, you guys are doing what you can.
Right.
Because tobacco got in line.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now you oil company guys are back in line. We can deploy a portion of our capital.
You may not be virtuous yet, but you're on the path to virtue.
That's all I want.
That's what we're looking for. And so that's enough. And so given the mandates we have in our investment policies, we're good to go. We'll consider investments. Or if you're a bank, maybe we'll consider underwriting an investment.
So just like I have this little Pfizer passport that says, I've had injection 1, a couple weeks from now, injection 2, I'll be good to go.
Yes.
Is there an equivalent passport?
See, that's that's what I think we need to think about this for a moment, because if that's the case, then that clearly shifts a lot of burden or responsibility to someone who's keeping score, are holding the oil companies to here's the progress they are making. They were X, now they're half.
It can't be the oil company itself that says,
right.
hey, I've self-policed, we're good.
Yeah, here's all my projects.
There's got to be some external referee, just like generally accepted accounting practices.
Sure, right.
And an auditor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there an auditing option or a firm or something that...
What standards are there? So you think about how that process would work. You'd have to say, well, what standards are to be met, right? When, how do I measure progress? It's sort of like what the API has done in terms of its standards regarding equipment and so forth to be certain
valves.
metallurgy, things like that. Yeah. Designs and pressures that it has to hold, operating conditions and things like that. And so I think we'll clearly see those third parties, emerge to do that. In the Oilpatch already we have Detnorsky Veritas, DNV, who does a lot of the inspections and regarding offshore. The American Bureau of Shipping is the other offshore group that the industry relies upon to make sure that you've met certain operating conditions.
You've got independent reserves auditing firms.
There you go.
That says, you said you have a billion barrels.
Right.
Hey, you do.
Yeah. And so I just wonder if, where that will all go. Clearly there'll be auditing done, and they'll issue opinions, I suppose. The question is, in my mind, is what level of detail will Joe and Jane public get to see? Is it just going to be, here's how many dollars we got spent? Is it here's what the volumes were in terms of tons of carbon then, tons of carbon now? Will it be, here's the projects we're working on that we're going to be instituting? I don't know quite where that goes, but I think that'll be of great interest to folks all around. If oil companies, again, in order to stay on the good side of those folks who are who have ESG guidelines.
I bet that at the start, those guidelines are sort of soft and squishy.
Yeah.
And with time, it becomes less soft and less squishy. That there's some hard metrics that get factored in.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, just in the news in the last couple of days, there's been talk about, under the Biden administration, that putting pressure on the funds who have what do I want to call them, climate change friendly investment guidelines to actually spell out what that means. Again, not only are the oil companies under pressure to deliver on promises, but the investment firms themselves are under pressure to say, well, yes, we've actually spoken to firms, we know about what they're doing, and as a result, they've met the guidelines we have. There needs to be a lot more explicit information out there for investors.
A Sarbanes-Oxley-like
equivalent. Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
But I agree completely. I think this is it's like metricing a cloud. How can you measure it, right?
It's
big
going to
be
and
kind of
fluffy
squishy for a while. It will get better at that point, but I think that'll be key. And I do think that there's some hope that as oil companies make progress on these measurable goals, that there'll be some acceptance inside the Oilpatch, inside the investor group, and maybe we won't be quite as shut out of markets as we might have feared they would be.
I was talking to a friend this morning.
Yes.
Who around Thanksgiving time, maybe back a little earlier than that, had put a little money in Chevron. Because Chevron was paying a pretty good dividend.
Sure.
He was looking for a good dividend.
Great.
And since then, his Chevron price per share has doubled.
Yeah.
So clearly,
sadly, his dividend rate has fallen.
Fallen in half now. But the point is that already we're seeing a set of investors, maybe not a broad-based set of investors,
I see your point.
but they're already coming back in the oil and gas industry.
Right.
I've put a lot of money in a certain great big oil field service company, and the share prices are rising because money is rotating in, but it's still so far off its peak. Yeah. What does it take to get back there? Maybe it's this ESG scorecard.
Well, that could help. Certainly, there's a lot of different communities in the investor community, and there will be some who couldn't care about climate change and what people are doing there. It's all about the bottom line. There'll be others who have a different priority. So
we're in the van down by the river community. That's kind of the size of our family investment.
Fair enough.
Live in a van.
Well, I know that besides this discussion around ESG, a lot of folks are tuning in to get an answer from last week's puzzler and to find out who was the lucky winner.
Because I'm convinced that there's probably a whole bunch of our listeners who now fast forward to this part of the talk.
Oh, probably.
And then they go back and they go, well, let's listen to the rest of it.
Quick recap. What was the puzzle?
So here was the puzzler. Yeah. It was Grandmother Coke.
Yes.
Had gone to my birthday party when I was 30.
Yes.
And she had said, because we all knew that Grandmother Coke was born in 1896. And she, at my birthday party, said, I had my first birthday party in 1904.
There you go.
And but we said you're born in 1896.
Yeah,
and the question was, how could that possibly be true?
Sure.
And we had so many people email in, and the vast majority were right.
Yes.
Because I'm not sure you can Google it, but you can do your research and you can see why that was.
And the answer.
Well, and the correct answer. Well, because my favorite answers this week
let's do it.
Came with essays.
Okay.
Because the correct answer, by the way, was
that she was born.
She was born on February 29th, 1896.
Aha.
And
so that's her. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So here's our friend John Dahl. He's down in Spring, Texas. You're not the winner, by the way, John, but I'm pulling yours out. He says there was no leap year in 1900 because it's not divisible by 400. I have no idea what that means. But that's probably the math you use because you've got to get the Earth's rotation synced up, right? And so her first birthday was on February 29th, 1904. That's a correct answer.
That's a correct answer.
But you are not the winner. Here's the guy you spent more days in Siberia with.
Oh, than anybody else, yes.
And who would that be?
Rob Berry.
Rob Berry here in Tulsa. And he says, I always enjoy, as for the puzzler, Granny was born February 29th, 1896. Because then he says there was no leap day in the year 1900, so et cetera. And then he says, according to Google, who knew you could look this up?
That's amazing.
1700, 1800, and 1900 were not leap years, but 1600 and 2000 are leap years.
Those are the 400-year gap.
I think that's the 400-year thing.
Right.
But our winner today
goes
to actually my friend Gary Derlin, and he's here in Tulsa. And Gary, here's the answer.
Yes.
He says there's no leap year in 1900 to adjust the calendar for Earth spin, but then he gives the best cultural reference of all.
Right.
He says, now I need to check out the Pirates of Penzance to see if Gilbert and Sullivan accounted properly for the pirate apprentice Frederick's birthday total. And I went, crap, that's right. The whole musical is about the 21st birthday of Frederick, the pirate apprentice. And so with Gary's alert, I looked at the entire comic opera, and sure enough, Pirates of Penzance, who's got Frederick being born on February 29th, 1860.
Yes.
And the whole thing centers around that he's got to wait till his actual 21st birthday, which is February 29th, 1940. They got the math wrong. It's February 29th, 1948. That's when he would have had his 21st.
People in the theater world not getting the math right.
They did not, and I had to use Excel. Anyway, Gary, you're the winner, my friend. So congratulations.
So Granny Coke could have been a dependent on her dad's, tax returns until 1984, I think. Yeah, something like that.
That's right.
Good
Grandmother
for her.
Coke.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for that answer. Thanks for listening in. This has been The Drill Down. I'm John Spears.
And I'm Richard Spears.